I need why it happened. I need the why, Tom, because I understand they need to stop the run. I understand they need Kenny Clark. I understand even what you said, that without now paying Micah all that money, they could pay other people that money, which, by the way, they might have had room to do a little bit had they signed people like Dak or CD earlier. I mean, but that's for another day. We've had those days quite a bit and waiting for resolution for this. You don't trade away 26-year-old generational pass rushers at the elite all-pro level for somebody 4 years older at a defensive tackle position. You just don't do it. We don't see it because you don't do it. These things you do not do.
The Raiders did it. Not for a defensive tackle. But the Raiders did make similar timeline, similar type of trade with Khalil Mack. Right, the key was this, Rich, though. They got the capital, right? They got the capital to go, all right, we're going to rebuild. That was John Gruden's whole philosophy, too. It was much like the Cowboys thinking, which is you tie up that much money in someone who's not your quarterback, it hamstrings who else hurt. But what did they get out of that trade? The Raiders drafted Ryan Edwards, a wide receiver who was basically never heard from again. They drafted a safety named Bless Austin. They drafted Damon Arnett, a cornerback, in the first round, who they cut after he put a video on the internet of him waving guns around and threatening to shoot somebody. And they got Josh Jacobs. That was the fourth player they got with the picks in that trade. It was a good player. Then they ultimately weren't able to re-sign him, and now he's teammates with Micah Parsons with the Packers. You get all the picks, all the cap space, all the cash you want.
Right.
If you don't find your next Micah Parsons, we're all going to reflect on this and say it's a massive error, obviously, on the Cowboys' part.
And I get it. And the Cowboys have had an excellent history of drafting well recently as well, except at the defensive tackle position, which is maybe part of why we're here. Is there anything to the fact that they were sick and tired behind the scenes of Micah Parsons? Because this was, in my mind, watching the Jerry Jones press conference on our network, the subtext of almost every answer he gave. I don't have a problem. The locker room's not going to have a problem. As a matter of fact, I feel better. I think that, I'm not saying that Micah wasn't, we greatly appreciated his time here, but we're in a better position. We have a better chance to win, which to a Cowboy fan and pretty much, again, anyone else, you do not trade 26-year-old kids at this position for somebody 4 years older in an interior lineman. You just don't do it. And they did it. And there was a down of trust. There has to be some. Is there anything to this, Tom?
It is fair to say, Rich, if you believe that a 26-year-old elite pass rusher who's had double-digit sacks, Pro Bowl every year he's been in the league, if you believe that guy is one of your absolute core players, cornerstone dudes, locker room leader, you're not trading him. That's absolutely fair. And you go back to last fall. They got it done with CeeDee Lamb because he's one of their guys. They got it done with Dak Prescott because he's one of their guys. They did try. Again, Jerry thought he had a deal done with Micah Parsons, and they could have strung this out and said, you're just going to play on the fifth-year option. We're not listening to the trade calls. You want to lose $1.3 million a week or whatever it would be by missing games, go for it. We're going to take that money. If you don't show up by midseason, we toll your contract. We own you for 2026. As well. And then we got 2 franchise tags beyond that. They could have gone down that road. But I still go back again, Rich. I know I've talked about it here before, to what we reported on Super Bowl Sunday, which is the Cowboys were having these internal discussions about Micah Parsons going back to last fall. And it was not simply, though this was certainly a big part of the conversation, the fact they got $60 million a year in Dak, they got $34.5 million in CeeDee Lamb. Is it really wise to pay what at the time would have been like $35 to $40 million for Micah Parsons? It ended up being a much higher number, but they had serious considerations of, is this in the best interest of the Cowboys to re-sign him, or should we trade him and get a bunch of compensation and kind of be able to address all these other needs that we feel we have? Well, they clearly came to the conclusion that, well, when in doubt, sign the guy. They thought in Jerry's mind they had a deal done, and then Micah said, call my agent to finish the deal, and the Cowboys said, no, we already negotiated this deal. There are other factors in this. There is certainly, and you go back, why did Micah Parsons, slide not that far, but why did he not go top 5 in the draft? Part of it was just some of the things about, is he an independent contractor? Is he going to be one of the leaders on the team? all this other stuff, is he kind of on his own program? And you see that, guys will be in OTAs where you'd like to have your guys around and he's off sumo wrestling somebody in Japan. I mean, that's just Micah. He's into, podcasting and doing all these other things, but he's a hell of a player. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and the Cowboys have dealt with a lot worse than a guy who sometimes goes on podcasts and says things that you wish he shouldn't. There's currently a whole Netflix documentary about how you can win with guys who are doing things much, much worse than anything that Micah Parsons is doing. But Jerry Jones is operated by a certain code, and you heard parts of this when he's talking last night. He felt like in his business life, in his football life, when you shake somebody's hand, you feel like you've got a deal. That's it. And he has done this with so many other players. Him and Bill Belichick are the two guys through the last couple of decades, 2-3 decades of football, who would do this all the time. Bring the player in, get with them, say, here's the contract, work it out, then basically call the agent and say, hey, we got a deal. You can sign off on this now. This was the rare occasion where a player went, no, actually, I don't feel comfortable with this. He's got an agent who's done tons and tons of deals, and they simply never engaged. Now, Jerry, last night when he was asked about, some of the recent answers that he gave to our guy Irv, among others, about not trading Micah Parsons, and he basically said, well, why would I tell you I want to trade a guy if I'm trying to trade him? I would do the opposite, which is what exactly he did here. And that, again, reinforces what we've reported, which is regardless of the timeline of when certain information came out, Rich, this was a several weeks process. They finally felt like they had the proper compensation to pull the trigger on this deal with the Packers. This was done sometime, I'm messing up my days now, but I believe it was around Tuesday. It was 3 days ago that they had the trade locked in, which then gives the leverage to the agent to go, all right, Packers, you want him? This is what it's going to take. He ends up with a monster contract, and the Cowboys end up with what they hope can be a very small, sized down version of the Herschel Walker trade that Jerry Jones invoked last night, talking about how that was the launching point from a dark moment in Cowboys history, a one-win season, and then all of a sudden drafted a bunch of future Hall of Famers and winning a few Lombardis.